Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is still doing well, and welcome to this midday Father's Day bonus upload. Before we jump into it, a couple links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below, the merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman, Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It doesn't cost a cent. Click that like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. And yes, folks, they definitely do matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to this bonus upload, shall we? Today's first encounter is from a subscriber. Hey Jeff, I had a close encounter with two of these dogmen, but luckily for us, they were young. In 2012, my parents decided to go on a holiday to Kashmir and asked me to come along, but I declined. A day before they were due to travel, my mother again asked if I wanted to go. I thought about it for a second and said, yeah, okay, I'll come along. Recently, I was sacked from work with no reason given, which pissed me off. Like, at least give me a reason. So anyway, I booked a ticket, and it was on the same airline and same flight. We left London and arrived at Islamabad airport, and let me tell you, it was really hot, and I'm not used to this weather. It's been a long time when I last came to my country, and even then, I witnessed a craft while we were cruising at high altitude, which came right next to the airplane, and I couldn't scream like I wanted to scream so loud, but something held me back. I watched it come within whatever distance without touching the plane. I saw every detail, and then it ducked under the airplane, and I instantly knew to run to the other side, which I did, and opened the window blind, and looked and saw it rise and level out with us. My brother came and saw it as well, and we both watched it, and then it took off at a really high speed. Later he told me he couldn't scream. This craft had moving parts, and the inner bit was stationary, and it was shaped like a diamond, and had a glow to it like an electric blue color. It was so weird the way it was spinning, and another aid was spinning in a different direction. It was controlled by something or someone. This happened in 1992. Anyway, we traveled to our destination. My mother and family have traveled to Kashmir many times and always stayed at her mother's home. But she told me she didn't want to stay there because of the rules at the home. It's a holiday, and obviously people go out and enjoy themselves, go sightseeing, and may come home late at night. So we didn't want any headaches and questions from her mother, so we brought our own place this very reason. And for a few years, the home was getting renovated and was almost complete. So we decided to stay at our own place, even though it was a little dusty. We got home, unpacked our things, and slept. The next morning, we picked up the family dog from my nan's home and brought him to our almost renovated place. We went out and visited many places, but we would always go no matter what. About 2 weeks in, we knew the routine, got milk before we would go home, so it would save us time having to go in the morning and whatever else we needed. The home is in a village with not many houses. It's a small village. Our home is built on a massive land, and we have a mud path that leads up to the house. We are coming home, and it's still daylight, but almost evening. and as we turn onto our mud path, which is around 150 to 200 feet to our home, we notice figures at the end of the path and near the home. We kept driving slowly, around 5 miles an hour, as it's narrow mud path and any animal can run out. At this point we're making jokes and laughing and guessing what they were. We guessed every animal for that region, but as we got closer it did not make sense. Nothing made sense at that moment, and everything went quiet. No laughing, no more jokes. You could hear a pin drop. My brother then spoke and said, "What the fuck?" I got scared, but I was intrigued to know what they were. And that is when we realized they were standing on 2 legs. Their arms were twice my arm size. As we got even closer, we could make out exactly every feature in detail. Both of these creatures were facing directly at us, but their heads were slightly facing to our left and their right, just slightly. Never have we ever seen anything remotely resembling these creatures. Their heads were like that of a wolf, but not exactly. Their bodies were that of a human, but certain parts looked like a monkey. The skin was visible and resembled that of a bat, and their hairs were an off-white color or cream. They had more hair on their necks and lesser hair everywhere else apart from their tail. The tails were small but bushy. The legs were bent and the feet were big for their size, even though their hands were too big for their size. And at the end of their fingers there were claws. The eyes were sunken in their face and were the color of the sunset. Both had ears that stood straight up. They were both hunched forward just a little. We got about 30 feet and stopped. None of us spoke apart from my daughter, who was crying and had her eyes closed. We just wanted them to leave so we could get into the house. 1 minute later or so, they both ran to their right and on 2 feet and jumped into the tall grass and disappeared. We sat there for a moment and collected our thoughts, and then we drove on the high driveway and quickly went indoors. Oh yeah, both were around 3 foot tall, and both looked identical, like they were twins, and they looked like young pups. Even for their size, they were muscular, especially their legs. They were very muscular and big. Remember, I don't know or ever heard of a cryptid. Heck, I didn't even know the word. Never watched or knew about Bigfoot or any other creature, so I had no idea what the hell they were apart from trying to identify them to the closest animal we could, and the closest animal was a werewolf. Yeah, a werewolf. That night, there was banging and screaming all night, and we made sure the windows and doors were locked. Eyeshine was seen red and the sunset color. I managed to take a picture when the family dog was attacked, as I heard yelping and ran out, and at the time I was taking a picture and managed to take a pic of the creature's head about 2 feet away from it. The pic was clear, as the front security light came on as well and gave me a good look. It let the dog go and immediately ran away. Thank God the dog was okay. The next day we were visited by 1 American man in a suit and 3 native men in uniform, and asked us what had happened and what we saw, so we told them everything. And I told them I took a picture of one creature and that it came out. They demanded the phone and got rude with me, and I got upset by the way they spoke. I gave them my daughter's phone, and he went through it and asked again, "Where's the phone?" And I said, "This is it," but the pic was on my phone, which was charging. I thought they would easily find it, so I told them that it's in the car in the dash, and they proceeded to all go out to the car and told me to stay there. As soon as they got to the car, I went to the phone and turned it off and put it inside a 25-kilogram rice sack. They came back and started speaking rudely. I told them the pic has probably been deleted, or it was never taken. They said they would come back, but never did. Before we left Kashmir, we could see army crafts going up and down day and night at our village. This is my encounter in 2012, and I only found out about Dogman in 2019. Thank you for listening. Hey Jeff, sorry, but I forgot to mention a few things which are very important to my views of everything. I'm a born Muslim and my faith is strong, and we believe in everything Christians believe in. Ever since having those encounters, I questioned everything that I was taught and read, even though I don't know what we were looking at apart from calling them werewolves. We are not supposed to believe in them or any other cryptid, but after seeing them, my entire view of everything changed. My family has shunned it out of their life, and knew if they had continued questioning that day, then they would also become weak-minded. It took bravery to write in and open up because my family are strict Muslims, and if ever they found out that my religious views are weak and questioned, then they would never speak to me again, or at least for a long time. I've had many other encounters, and so has my family, with jinn, or what you call demons. If you would like me to write them in, I would be obliged to do so. Alright, so I did write this gentleman and said, hey, yeah, I'm definitely would love to check out your jinn encounters. I also mentioned the photograph or picture on the phone, and I'm hoping that he still has it. It's been 9 years, so hopefully he does have it. But an interesting thing about this is that I had talked to another Muslim in regards to cryptids, and supposedly believing in these creatures, not supposedly, but believing in these creatures is a way of questioning their faith, and a lot of them dismiss these encounters that they have, which is kind of dangerous to do because you can't stuff this stuff in. You know, you've got to acknowledge that it happened, or mentally you will become sick. So I'm glad that they did share this with us. Today's second encounter. This happened when I was probably 7 or 8. I was sleeping with my mother in her room because my dad worked the night shift. It was a warm summer night, so we had the windows open. Our house is right next to the woods. I remember waking up to a piercing scream of what sounded like maybe a bobcat or some other similar animal. My mother and I both bolted upright at the sound, and a second later my older sister darts into the room and jumps onto the bed. Then we hear Wyatt screaming. Whatever had a hold of this animal was huge. It was snorting and chewing as the animal it was killing screamed for its life. Now, I've done a lot of reflecting as an adult on this night, and it's still the topic that pops up when we were talking about freaky shit. The only way I can describe the sound is similar to a big boar snorting the way they do. The power behind the snorts made me think that it was a bear or something with massive lung capacity. After about a minute of sitting frozen on the bed, we made our way to the window to peek outside and see if we could catch a glimpse of what the hell was eating this animal. We couldn't see anything in the darkness of the woods, but we could hear clear as day the chomping on the predator and the snapping of the bones of the prey. It was just past the tree line, maybe 20 yards away. It was so loud it could have been directly under the window, and it lasted for a solid 10 minutes. When it finally stopped chewing, that was it. We never heard it walk away. It was like it had killed something, ate it, and just vanished into thin air, or stood there watching us. It was silent, and so were we for a long time, just listening to nothing, too afraid to even breathe. It's an eerie feeling when that forest is silent. This thing had to be huge. I can't stress that enough. A bear we would have heard roaming around the brush afterward. Same for any other large predator like a mountain lion. And there are no boar in Pennsylvania. It didn't sound like any of those things, though. I have since seen and heard the likes of those animals, and nothing I have ever heard sounds even remotely close to what we heard that night. But that's not even the weirdest part. The next morning, we told my dad what had happened, and we all went scouring the area where we had heard it take place, just inside the tree line. There wasn't a single twig out of place, no evidence of a scuffle, no prints, no carcass, not even a drop of blood, absolutely nothing. With the amount of brush and how large this thing sounded, there should have definitely been some kind of remnants of that shit we heard. There was nothing, so what the hell was it? Was it a ghost bear? A Sasquatch? A fucking werewolf? I really can't tell you. But I never ventured too far into the woods after that night. Weird shit happens in the woods at night. A piece of advice: when the forest goes silent, make like a tree and leave. Today's third encounter. This experience happened during my teenage years at around 15 or 16 years old. I lived in a small town of 2,000 people, mainly surrounded by boreal forest in Canada. This place was great. We often saw deer, and it was usually a quiet, safe place. To put a bit of context, my house was located at the side of a dead end, and the only light source at night was our house. There was a single streetlight at the end of the road, but it only lit up part of the street and the forest behind it. We were a dog family. I only had small dogs when I lived there. Every day we needed to let them out to pee, as all dogs do, but at night they were almost impossible to see because of the darkness. Our terrain was kind of big and the light sources were weak. I was a gamer at the time and often stayed up late, so I was the only one who needed to take the dogs out to pee at 2 a.m. because it stayed with me while I was playing. One night I opened the door and waited for my dog to do his thing while trying to look for it. I only was able to see the reflection of the light in its eyes when it looked at me. I started to look around because there was sometimes deer sleeping in the woods under the streetlight or wild turkey roaming. When a little dark spot caught my attention, it looked like a human head coming out of the brush, but I wasn't able to see it because it was so dark. I didn't want my dog to run after whatever it was. It had the tendency to run away after wild animals, so I called it. It didn't listen to me, but the thing in the brush started crawling towards the street slowly. It looked like a human with thin limbs, but a normal body and a slightly longer neck. I started to freak out a bit and shook the treat cup for my dog so he'd hurry up. Came running inside, and I shut the door as fast as I could. I shut the lights off in the house so I could have a better view of what was outside. The strange animal crawled fast, almost running like a dog with every limb broken, as an improvised crawling movement. The animal passed under the light where I saw it had no fur. As a shaved animal, it was disgusting. I was afraid, and standing in the dark, the animal ran toward the light and continued down the street, where I wasn't able to see it because the houses in my neighborhood were surrounded by trees. I locked the door and went to sleep with my dog. I talked to nobody about it. So later I went to bed kind of early. I went and watched some videos on my phone. They were gaming videos. I had my earphones in. A sound on the video was reoccurring, and I thought it was annoying, like a distant scream. After a couple of minutes, the video finished, and I went to watch another one, but during the loading of this video, the sound occurred again. I took off my headphones and waited for the sound. I heard it, and immediately had tears in my eyes. It was coming from my window. My room was on the second floor, so I looked down in the forest to see if there was any movement. The only light near the forest entrance was the moonlight and an underwater light in our pool that emitted a small halo around it. I wasn't able to see anything, but the sound occurred again. It was like the mix between a distorted scream and a pig having its throat slit, or a strong pain from a whining dog. I looked down and saw the animal had passed so fast It was really hard to see. But I barely saw a human-sized animal with thin limbs crawling like a spider. It wasn't running after anything, but the sound occurred another time. It was the most horrible thing I had ever heard. I shut my window. I heard it again 3 other times, and it stopped after that. I talked to my dad about the sound, and he told me it was probably a deer being attacked by a wild animal. I was so scared of it I barely walked in the woods at night, the 3 years following, before moving to the city to go to university. Even to this day, I have never heard of an animal making a sound like that. There were barely any reports of wolves, coyotes, or bear in my area, and believe me, I made a lot of discoveries exploring the forest in this town. Today's 4th part of the upload is a very strange encounter. So I live in North Georgia, in the hills. I've seen something twice now, and I think it may be following me. Maybe someone here has seen it, what I'm talking about, or has maybe an idea of what I'm dealing with. A few months back it happened the first time. I was out standing with my puppers, so we go potty at night. There's a field next to my friend's house I was at. There's nothing in this field, nothing. However, that night, I saw what appeared to be a very large, kind of straggly bush. Puppers noticed, since he was walking towards the field. He stopped dead and stared at the bush and froze. I was already creeped out enough. It looked like there might have been movement of some kind from the brush, but I told myself it was just a breeze, and went inside, refusing to turn my back until I had no choice. I know it wasn't there, or better yet, it shouldn't be, because I've seen that field plenty enough to know it's empty. Well, daylight strikes, I go back out with puppers again, and sure enough, it's not there. Second time was just maybe a couple weeks ago, early in the morning, but still dark, standing outside of work, waiting to go in. I look towards yet another normally empty field next to my job. There's another large bush. This one didn't look quite the same. It was taller and looked more like dead branches hanging off of it from the top to bottom. It was shaped like the capital letter A, almost, but the top had almost a rounded part, kind of like a point of the A. I could see this time much better. It wasn't as concealed by the shadow as before, being right near my friend's house. Anyway, I felt an immediate alertness and a slight fear. Not as much as last time, but different circumstances. I walked backwards into work that morning to avoid turning my back again on this thing. I go out for a smoke in the full daylight a couple hours later, and sure enough again, nothing there. Just as before, I know this sounds crazy, and I promise it's 100% true. I'm not hallucinating, and I had plenty of time to observe both of these figures, to figure out if I was mistaking it for something else. I'm open to any ideas. I have looked online all over and cannot find anything similar. I think it might have been a Sasquatch. What do you guys think? Tonight's final encounter. The first part of my experience is all the way back in 2017. Back then, my neighborhood was still being constructed. Me and my mom lived right near where the next houses were being built. After a couple 100 yards of just dirt, the woods started. One day, while me and my mom were walking around our house, we noticed something far away. It was all black and appeared to be hairy. It was limping like an injured monkey would. We didn't have enough time to take a picture of it because it was going relatively fast and it was almost to the woods. We just went back inside and considered nothing much of it. Fast forward to recent times, a lot of the new houses have already been built. One of my friends lives right near the woods. One time my friend told me about this monster he saw walking through. the out part of the woods. He said it looked like a small gorilla. It appeared to be 3 feet tall, and he said it had a white stripe on it. Later that week, while we were checking out the outer part of the woods, we heard this loud scream coming from the woods. Just as we were about to step out of the woods, we heard a stick crack. We turned back to see, standing roughly 10 yards away from us. We then got the hell out of there and never went back. That's all that's happened for now. A little bit of update. I live in Middle Tennessee. The woods is between two neighborhoods, a warehouse, and what seems to be mine or quarry of some sort. We have had our fair share of really rich people here, but not too many. Also, earlier today I heard a loud growl. It was similar to that of either a bear or a wolf. Alright folks, there you have it, today's bonus. I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. Thank you everyone for supporting the channel. Your support is what keeps the channel growing and going, and honestly what gives people a chance and a place for them to share their experiences and theories judgment-free. Everyone, please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and friends. These creatures are real. They are out there and dangerous. Share this information with the people you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for answers, and God bless.